Okay, this is the how question from Parents and Children practice paper, and we're just going to work through it and try and write a full mark answer if we can. So first thing to notice, it's a 10-mark how question. Most of the time how questions are going to be 5 or 10 marks. So if it's 10 marks, we know we've got 15 minutes on it. And the first thing that we might want to do is do a little bit of unpacking of the question. So how does the writer show then worth realizing that we're looking at Harry's thoughts and feelings about the first day at school. So important that we realize that Harry is a father trying his best to bring up his 4-year-old son Pat alone. So useful information there, because Harry is likely to think and feel perhaps quite nervous, isn't he, if he's a single dad. Sounds like he's having quite a tough time if he's trying his best. So we might expect that he might be a bit nervous, might be a bit worried. Let's see if that's true. First thing we've got is this opening statement, Pat started school. Nothing yet necessarily. And then we've got Harry saying the uniform he had to wear should have made him look grown up. Now, if we'd have had the uniform he had to wear made him look grown up, we would have suggested that Pat was ready for school. But the fact that we've got should have made him look grown up suggests that it doesn't. So Pat looks very young, and perhaps because he looks so young, his dad's a bit worried about him. The grey V-neck sweater, the white shirt and the yellow tie should have made him look like a little man, but they didn't. So underlining the fact that it seems like Pat isn't quite ready for school yet. Let's see what else it says. The formality of his school clothes only underline the shocking newness of him. Okay, so we've got shocking newness. Is an interesting way of suggesting that Pat still looks really, really young. We could talk about the fact that the word shocking is quite exaggerated, or exaggerates how young Pat is. Then, approaching his 5th birthday, he wasn't even young yet, he was still brand new. I think that does exactly the same, doesn't it? It exaggerates how young he is as well. So we can use that to make the same point. Now I had to let my beautiful boy go out into the world. I had to let him suggests that Harry's not eager, he's not really looking forward to sending his boy to school. So let's just underline that phrase, I had to. At least until 3:30. For both of us, it felt like a lifetime. So time's going to drag for Harry while his son's at school. So Harry's clearly not happy about it. He's not looking forward to sending his son to school. Maybe he's kind of dreading it. He's nervous, he's anxious. Now, important that we keep our focus on Harry rather than on Pat. So Harry says that Pat wasn't smiling now. At breakfast he was pale and silent in his pastiche. Now you might know what pastiche means. If not, it means something like a not very good fake or a not very good impression. So he was pale and silent in his not very good impression of adults' clothing. Still talking about Pat, he was struggling to stop his chin trembling and his bottom lip sticking out. While over the Cocoa Pops, I kept up a running commentary. Right, we're back talking about Harry with the I, because it's Harry narrating the story, about the best days of your life. Now, why would he keep talking about school being the best days of your life unless he's trying to reassure Pat? So maybe he understands that Pat is worried as well. Then it was time to go. Now, you could read into that statement a sort of sense of dread. It builds tension, and perhaps it mirrors Harry's own tension, because it keeps us waiting. It's not giving us instant answers, instant solutions. Okay, so we'll have a look on the next part of the extract, and straight away some very simple things that we can highlight. As we drove close to the school, I was seized by a moment of panic. So the I tells us that this is relevant because this is Harry saying a moment of panic. Children everywhere, swarms of them all in exactly the same clothes as Pat. Okay, so he seems kind of overwhelmed. I took back Pat's clammy hand and we joined the throng. So here Pat's clearly nervous if he's got sweaty palms, but that's not about Harry. We were just going through the gates to join them when I noticed the lace of Pat's brand new leather shoes were undone. Nothing there still about Harry's thoughts or feelings. Let me get your lace for you, Pat. Well, perhaps we could talk about how protective he is, and doing things for his son, but that could just be normal, totally normal. Two bigger boys rolled past arm in arm. They leered at us. Pat smiled at them shyly. He can't even do his shoes up. One of them snorted. So nothing here about Harry until it was time to leave him. Although there had been a few emotional goodbyes before he dropped out of nursery school, this time felt a bit different. This time it felt as though I were being left. Right. So all we need for that is to put the feeling as though I were being left in our own words, because the question was about thoughts and feelings. We've got it felt, so this is clearly about feelings. And another way of explaining being left, we could call that a sense of being abandoned, maybe just a sense of loneliness. So I'd make a little bit of a note there. Sense of being abandoned, lonely. He was starting school, and by the time he left school, he would be the man and I would be middle-aged. Right, so perhaps there's a sense of feeling quite old, or certainly he's contemplating, he's thinking about how old he's going to be when his son gets out, finishes school. And those long days of watching Star Wars videos at home while life went on somewhere else were over. Those days had seemed empty and frustrating at times, but I missed them already. So when we miss something, we can call that nostalgia. So he's feeling nostalgic for the past. Thoughts and feelings, totally relevant. Let's just try and make that a bit neater. And we've got that repetition of my baby was joining the world. So I think here we've got a sense that his son's still very young, but actually that Pat is growing up. And that's, I think, Harry's thoughts and feelings. So if we look, we've got actually quite a lot of useful annotation here. Should have made him look grown up. We might want to just draw attention to should have, but didn't. should have but didn't make him feel grown up, make him look grown up. Exaggerates how young Pat is. I had to. There's loads there. Right, so if we start writing up, we might start with the uniform he had to wear should have made him look grown up. So the writer, and then name of the writer might be quite useful. So Parsons. Shows that Harry doesn't think his son Pat looks grown up enough to go to school. He says the clothes should have, that's the key bit of the quote, grown up but didn't. This implies Harry feels Pat looks very young indeed, and we could keep going, and is perhaps scared whether Pat is ready for school. Okay, that's quite a detailed explanation of a single quote, but without some of the typos. Looks a pretty decent answer. Then we can move on to the next one. So we've got quite a nice link here, haven't we? This one, his clothes should have made him look grown up but don't, so therefore he still looks really young. And then we've got this exaggeration, the shocking newness, and he was still brand new. So this feeling continues when Harry calls him brand new and emphasizes the shocking newness of Pat. The use of exaggeration conveys Harry's concern about his son's age, or about his son's youth. That's better. It's the youngness that's the problem. Okay, back again. Got a nice straightforward one. Parsons uses the phrase had to give the impression that Harry doesn't, I want to use the word feel, doesn't feel ready to let Pat go to school. He seems anxious about it. Okay, so making sure that I use some of the terms that link to the question. We've got feeling of anxiety linking to thinks and feels in the question. So he talks about how long he's got to wait until Pat comes back from school. Harry appears worried too about how long Pat will spend without him at school. Is it like a lifetime? This continues the use of exaggeration to underline Harry's worries. Okay, because just remembering that this is a how question, So we need to talk about the writer's language and the techniques. Exaggeration as a technique. We've talked about some of the language here with should have. Talked about use of exaggeration here. So perhaps looking for a bit more variety, we've talked about exaggeration. I kept up a running commentary about the best days of your life. Okay, I'm going to skip that one because I'm not sure it takes us anywhere new compared to where we've been before. I was seized by a moment of panic I'm definitely going to use. So, point the reader where to look. As they arrive at school, Parsons writes that Harry was, embedding the quotation, seized with a moment of panic. Now, I want to talk about the technique used here. This is what we call declarative. It's stating a fact. Okay, so this declarative sentence conveys very clearly Harry's growing tension and anxiety. Okay, so we'll link it back to the question again. Just going to make one more so you get a clear sense of the idea. Right, this time it felt as though I were being left. Yeah, I could talk about that. I would be middle-aged. I miss them already. Right, I do want to talk about nostalgia. So, Parsons conveys Harry's growing nostalgia when he says, I missed them already, which is talking about his times with Pat. So this gives a sense that Harry is aware of time passing and that he himself is getting older and Pat is growing up. Okay, and I'm going to leave it there because I think I've got a range of points. I've referred to some techniques, some technical features. So the declarative sentence, remembering that any sentence that states a fact is a declarative sentence, so that's quite an easy one to use. We talked about use of exaggeration a couple of times. I think that is an important feature with embedded quotations, so pretty happy with that as a range of points.